Hi guys, T here, back for part 3 of How to Craft a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. We're going to be continuing our breakdown of how to put together your own games today with Dungeons, Dread, and Doom. That is, introducing a dungeon, going there, and then how to make it a dangerous and interesting location. Now, we've already set down the books that we're going to use, the story that we're going to tell. We've written all the lore, and we've narrowed things down so we know what's going to happen. So, what do you need, first of all, in Dungeons and Dragons? Well, you need dungeons. So, dungeons are, as we all know, hotspots, places where you find the treasure, you fight the monsters, you solve the traps and puzzles and different things, and try to get out alive with treasure in hand or with, prince or princess, um, whatever goal it happens to be. Go clear it out because there's monsters moving in there and starting an orc village or whatever it happens to be. And there are three primary things to worry about when you're building a dungeon, and that's introducing it. That is, somebody either mentioning it to you or finding it on a map or finding a map that leads to it. It's not on any conventional map. Going there, what the travel time is going to be like, etc., etc., and then the design of the location itself. Now, as with larger than life enemies like the Tarisk and things like that, if you want to really build up like the idea of a dungeon, the first thing you can really do is to make sure that your players hear about it. There has to be rumors. There have to be people talking about it. Where one of the last blue dragon eggs of such and such was captured by this cult, and they've hatched it into a little squirrel-sized monster, and they're going to raise it to be, this cult's leader when it's big and strong, and they're keeping it in this dungeon here. Go take them out. We'll give you 1,000 gold or whatever it happens to be. But yes, talking up the location makes it more exciting. Is it a temple hidden in a jungle somewhere? Is it a former cathedral? Is it a crypt? Who's buried there? Why? Why did people stop getting buried there? A lot of early and rookie dungeon masters forget that dungeons are not really dungeons unless they're like jails, under castles. Dungeons are locations. They are places. Uh, if you've got a crypt, who's buried there? What religion was this? Building things, especially underground, building things with, hewn stone and brickwork and things like that is enormously expensive. So it's not just going to be a random amalgamation of rooms that makes no sense. Every foot, every door is placed that way on purpose. Maybe not only to be cost effective, but to have some meaning. Are there 7 rooms between the entrance and the final room of a crypt because there are 7 levels in heaven or 7 levels in hell? Or if you go to a ruined castle, where did everybody sleep? Or if you go to a barracks, where's the broom closet? Where did people go to the bathroom? Where's the kitchen? It's important before you make a quote unquote dungeon is to craft it as though it were new first. And then if you want to mess it up and put dungeon monsters in it, or people or cultists or whatever it happens to be, then you can kind of age it down. Put collapsed hallways in it, put flooding, put, like I said, a cult who's raising a baby dragon, whatever it happens to be. Remember, when this place was built, it was brand new, it had a purpose. You need to remember what that purpose was, who built it, and why. If you This is why I don't like randomly generated dungeon games, other than like the .hack GU titles, because those actually had a great story. Randomly generated dungeons not only come across as lazy, but they come across as meaningless. It's like, well, we want to fight some monsters and get some treasure. Well, we can here's one room with a dart trap, and here's another room with 5 orcs, and here's a room with a treasure chest, and it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't feel like a place. There's no there's no purpose to this. I mean, even kobolds, or goblins, the lowest of the low, they make their own villages, they make their own tunnel systems, and you know what? They keep their weapons in one place, so they have a barracks or a weapons spot. They keep all their young and their hatchlings in another spot for rearing. They keep their goods and treasures in another spot. They've got vaults. Everybody, anytime that a building or a village is made, there is order to the chaos, even if your players can't see it because they can't obviously see the whole dungeon map when you start. There has to be an elegance to it. It has to be purposeful. It has to be finite. It has to make sense. So, it could be, like I said, if you're making a castle, where's the kitchen so they could feed everybody? Where's the barracks so all the soldiers could sleep? Where's the vault where they kept all their treasure if they had any? If there was a princess tower, was there a princess in it? Are there 3 flights of stairs that lead up there, and you can find a broken down 4-poster bed where there used to be, if royalty ever stayed there, that was like the royal suite up in that princess tower. Make it real, and then make it into a dungeon is I guess what I'm trying to get across. Now, as far as monsters go, there's not a lot I can really give advice on because monsters are entirely up to taste and placement. Like, I know you're not going to put a lava golem in a jungle because that doesn't make any sense. Or you're not going to put an ice yeti in an alleyway somewhere killing Bruce Wayne's parents because that doesn't make any damn sense. Now, there are categories of things you can use. Like, if you're in a jungle, well, you might have tigers and giant panthers and, carnivorous plants and things like that. There are categories of things that you can definitely look through, or dinosaurs even. Hell, if you're going through ancient jungles, you could drop a raptor in there and just catch your players off guard. As far as advice on monsters, there's not a lot I can tell you. It's just sort of a matter of personal taste, and the best I can really tell you about running monsters is to have a few monsters that they know what they are, and then a few monsters that they don't know what they are. Like, everybody knows what an orc is, everybody knows what a goblin is, but not a lot of people know what a distraction is. Not a lot of people know what a Nothic is. And when you're describing these creatures to them, don't name them. It's like, it's got long spindly hands and a giant eyeball and, a long-jawed mouth that could probably take your whole face off if it wanted to. If you call it a Nothic, or if you call it, whatever it happens to be, a giant 2-legged lizard runs by and it takes that first guy off his horse and vanishes into the underbrush, they might put together that it's a raptor, but they don't know it's a raptor. It could be any number of things with any number of abilities. So if you can, as a DM, try not to name your monsters ever. Because if they can name it, they can quantify it. And if they can quantify it, then they will begin to believe that they can kill it. And that takes away some of the dread. You want monsters that just they smell like death. They've got blood around their mouths. They've got sharp claws, sharp teeth, whatever it happens to be, flailing tentacles all over the place. But, you're not going to call it a chaos beast because suddenly it's got a name. It can be defined. It can be defeated. You have to give that air of mystery. Describe it. In fact, have the picture in front of you and describe it in great detail. Just don't name it. And as long as they don't have a name for it, the players might name it, but that'll be the name that they made up, so they can't, open the monster manual between game sessions or whatever it happens to be to find out what exactly they're looking at and, pull them out of the story. But if they see, a flash of eyes and teeth and a long tail, you could be describing a T-Rex, but they might think it's something else entirely. They don't know. It's still in the underbrush. Don't name it. Don't quantify it. Especially when you're placing things in dungeons that might be hiding, You don't want to see, you catch the quick flap of a gargoyle's wings going around the corner. Well, no, wrong. You catch, some gray, stony, moss-covered appendages slowly working around the corner as you come into the hallway. There's something heavy plodding down the next passage. Do you dare go after it? It could be a gargoyle, it could be a golem, it could be anything that's gray and heavy. They have no idea. So sell the mystery, sell the mystique and the horror of what they're about to cross swords with, and they will be more hyped up. They'll be more excited. They'll be more cautious. As long as they don't know what it is, it could be anything, which is how a lot of horror movies are made, actually. As long as you don't see the monster, your mind fills it in for you, and it makes it 10 times worse than it actually is. Now, as far as speaking of fear and phobia, as far as the dread and doom that comes with dungeons, there is real fear and there is fake fear. I was talking with a friend a long time ago, trying to figure out. He said, how do you make your players scared? How you even running like a horror campaign, it's really hard to do. There are certain lines that most DMs won't cross. Like, you could say, oh, make sure your character has a phobia, so whenever you run across that, you'll have like a -8, and that's their fear. Or if you capture them and torture them, you're only attacking their hit points. They don't care about their hit points. But as soon as you start, cutting off fingers and their dexterity stat starts dropping permanently because they're missing digits, oh, then they'll be afraid. Sometimes you can design dungeons that, like, you have to make them understand how freaking dangerous some of these places are. Like, that 1d6 dart trap you've got going on doesn't matter. They oh no, I got hit with some throwing darts that sprang out of the wall. No. You need things that are, if somebody took the time to put a trap somewhere, it needs to be deadly. Which is why, quote unquote dungeons should only have a few traps in them, because they're meant to kill people that come into the dungeon. So a 1d6 dart trap doesn't help. But say a repeating fireball trap might help, because it could do 3d6 of damage, and they're on fire, and they're knocked down and prone. That'll kill lesser heroes straight away. A loose ceiling tile gives way to just a descending column of stone, and it just crushes the person that's under it, unless they make like a DC strength check of 20 or 22 to not just get crushed under its supreme weight and take 10d10 crushing damage. You have to be out to get them if you're going to design a scary dungeon. Now, yes, there are training dungeons where you can go through, oh, there's a d6 dart trap, there's a pit that goes down 20 feet, but you can fall down and take 2d6 falling damage and then climb out. If you're going to make a serious quote-unquote dungeon, you need to mound on the damage. You have to punish them for doing stupid things or for not checking for traps. There are even fake doors that spring open, and then there are death holes behind them that could just stab somebody in the chest and impale them for like 4d8 damage. They need to understand that they're not supposed to be wherever they are. And again, this place is out to get them, and they didn't design this place, you did, and that elegance has to come out. They need to understand that whatever's being protected here, or whatever dwells here, is smart enough to stave off most people. And if your players don't want to be most people, they have to be smart about this place. Pick and choose carefully your monsters and your traps when you're filling this place with dangers. And you have to avoid, also, one of the main things I saw you have to avoid is the how did it get in here problem. Like, if you've got a 15 by 15 room and a dragon that is a large creature, if there's no door that the dragon can get in and out through, how did it get there? There's got to be a tunnel or a hole or a skylight, some way for it to get in and out. Otherwise, it would have starved to death. So when you're dealing with large creatures, make sure that if this is their lair, they've got plenty of room to get in and out. I was surprised how many people just straight up forget that. So, building a dungeon, filling it with dreadful things, and promising the doom of anybody that is dumb enough to just casually stroll through. That is the main, like I said, they're hot spots. This is going to be the main part of your campaign that excites your players. Make sure it's interesting. Make sure, above all, that it makes sense, that this is a real place. So, if they're tramping through a house, there's got to be all the regular house rooms. If they're tramping through a temple, there has to be, sleeping places, worship places, places where they kept all the candles and incense. Make sure, I know I'm talking in circles, but I have to keep iterating it. Make sure when you build a dungeon, it's a real place. And I guess that's all I will have to say for now. Join me next time for part 4 of How to Craft a D&D Campaign.